All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Morning Huddle. Today, I have a special guest on the show. His name is Mikey Campbell, and Mikey Campbell is going to be talking about just some grassroots community development. And before we get started with that, Mikey, just tell everyone about yourself, who you are, what's your story.
Okay, so my name is they call me Mikey T, Mikey T Campbell. I was born in New York. My mom is Jamaican, and during her stint in school and stuff like that, she sent me to live in Jamaica when I was a young baby. So I did a couple of years growing up in Jamaica with my uncle and my cousins down there. So I always say that those little years kind of formed the foundation for me, that kind of set me on a different path. So after doing that, I came up here. I went to school, did my usual thing. I was a typical kid. I just didn't really wasn't really too crazy about school, but I did what I had to do just to graduate. Graduated, went to Westchester Community College up here in New York. Became a respiratory therapist at the age of 22 years old. Started working, got into a like real heavy career, and I realized I started making quite a bit of money at 22. I started making close to six figures a year, and slowly I realized that money wasn't always it. So I started looking for what I can do outside of myself and outside of money to be able to make a difference. I went through
Got
a
it.
couple of different phases through reading books such as Start With Why by Simon Sinek, and getting introduced to Gary Vee and different entrepreneurs, and trying to figure out where my path was exactly. In the midst of that, one of the things I always wanted to do is I always wanted to move to Jamaica by the time I was 30. So with that, there was always a lot of questions about what I would do and whether it was possible. So in 2018, I decided to start a documentary. And I started going around Jamaica and going around America here, talking to Jamaicans on the island, in the country, and talking to Jamaicans here in the diaspora, talking about what can we do as Jamaicans to invest more into Jamaica and help build up the country. And I've been doing that since 2018, and COVID-19 stepped in, kind of slowed down production on the film, but it didn't really slow up the ultimate mission, which is the ultimate mission is getting people inspired more to invest in Jamaica. So since COVID-19, we did care packages in the heat of it from March to June. We did care packages where we would send down money and have a team on the ground that would go there and buy locally and give to people who were in need. And through that, we were able to touch a lot of people, help stimulate the local economy down there, and just kind of show people that the film is something important, but what we're doing is something a lot bigger than just the film. It's really about the ultimate care of the people in the country. Oh, and the documentary is called Jamaica Story, and that's Jamaica underscore story. I can put that in the comments. And that's kind of a little gist of what we've been doing.
Got it. And that kind of dovetails into what we're going to talk about, which is grassroots community development. So tell us all what that means.
Um, Grassroots community development is something I that I touch upon in my journey to learn more and figure out why exactly, as much as charity that we do around the world, what is it that's not allowing the good that we do to stick and to actually allow for complete development. And one of the biggest things that I realize, I've seen it through my escapades in Jamaica, because a lot of times, sometimes you think that giving somebody money or giving somebody a book or something would change a community, but that doesn't, in essence, change a community, because what it does is it creates that saviorism. So they
Hmm.
look at a person from outside of their community coming in and saving them, and it's like, wow, it's great. It makes us feel good, and it is something good that we do, but it doesn't lead to the development of the community's own passion to take care of themselves. Because even though
Right.
we did this great thing for them, we're not inspiring them to that you can do it. It's like, oh, an outside force has to come and help you. So what grassroots community development is working with people within the community and inspiring them to take the initiative and the drive to drive their own community development. So even if I come into the community, I'm coming in as a supporting hand. I'm not coming in as the hand giving. I'm helping them do what they need to do to give and continue to build themselves up.
So you're empowering them as opposed to just doing it for them.
Yeah,
Is that right?
it's basically teaching a man to fish rather than fishing for them.
Right. So you touched a little bit on this, but how is this different than, outside community development?
It's a lot different because what it does is it gives them ownership. It gives them ownership. They're not being said, here, do this. They're saying, hey, come to the table, let's sit down and let's figure out what it is that your community needs. And what that does is, one, it gives them ownership. Two, it takes away there's a God complex that kind of comes with a lot of charity. People feel so big and mighty because they're giving. But the biggest problem with that type of relationship where I come into a community and I decide what I want to give or what I want to change is, it may not be that big of a deal to the people. Even though
Right.
I may not understand how they live with it, it may be something that they're used to, and there may be something that's more important to them that they would like to fix first. So it's like,
Correct.
you can't preach to them, you can't, because you've never lived in their shoes. So what it is basically is just kind of, instead of me trying to tell them what needs to be changed and they're just doing whatever they have to do in the moment to get what it is that I'm trying to give them, they're really sitting down and they're coming to the table and they're really starting a conversation and developing an initiative that's driven by them. So even if I'm removed from the table, they have that ownership that they will keep going with it.
Got it. So staying away from a more of an imperialistic model,
Yeah.
that others have used in the past. Is that fair to
Yes.
say? Okay. So what are some of the major, who I should say, are some of the major supporters of this effort?
Some of the books that I read, I always make sure I had to make sure I wrote down their names because I really don't want to mess up their name. There is Dambisa Mayo. She's the writer of a book called Dead Aid. And this book talks about how since the 1970s, America has given aid to Africa, different countries in Africa, in the essence of $1 trillion. And yet still poverty is on the rise, joblessness is on the rise. And she kind of just delves into that aspect of, yeah, we're giving them money, but is that money that we're giving actually going towards initiatives that they're driving? Is it actually getting to the people, and are we actually making a impact? And that's very interesting to me because $1 trillion is a lot of money. And I also I watched this documentary called Charity Inc. and one of the commenters on it said, you've never seen a country be aided from third world to first world. They've developed from third world to first world based on initiatives run by their country and things like that. But we have to really get past that mentality that aid will do it. Another person is Robert Lupton, Dr. Robert Lupton. He actually lives in the inner cities of Atlanta. He and his wife were living in Georgia, getting ready to move to the suburbs, and he said that God spoke to him, and he was like, listen, he's the writer of Charity Detox, and Charity Detox is the big book that he wrote that I read, and he instead of moving to the suburbs, moved to the inner city of Atlanta. And one of his biggest teachings is the first thing you need to do when you go to try to make a change in the community is not do anything at all. It's to sit down, is to listen. And he said living there, he has done a lot more. He has done a lot more for the community without having to create this imperialistic mindset. He said one of his son's friends was looking for a job, and it wasn't anything that he had to do. His son was working somewhere, and his son's friend is in this neighborhood, so he got him a job. Through creating this community and creating this initiative and just listening, they really found out what the people wanted to do. And once you find out what the people want to do, it makes it a lot easier for people to get behind it because they really feel like it's community driven.
Yeah. You said $1 trillion has been spent in Africa, and we haven't seen that translate into development. Why do you think that is? Do you think there's an intention behind it, or it's just willful ignorance, or what is it that causes that? Because I think there's some well-intentioned people out there trying to do the right thing, but why is it not leading to development?
Well, I know one of the biggest things they talk about is corruption. And sadly, you give all this money to an African country and it stops at the top. And there are no checks and balances when it comes to these aids that are being given. So we give the money and it's like, okay, we did our part. It's like, okay, we did our part. We gave the money, but is that money being used in the right way? And even though that money may not be used in the right way, we've made the promise to give, so we'll give again the next year. So there is no checks and balances, and there is nobody really going in and making sure that people are sitting down and doing what they said they were going to do with the money. Another thing that happens is people think of aid just as giving away of free money. Another part of aid is giving loans at cheaper interest rates for longer periods of time. So people will get these type of loans, and what they'll do is they'll feed into consumerism. They won't feed into development. And the last thing you should ever do is use credit for consumerism. Because if I get a loan for $100 million, right? Even though there may be starving families out there, the problem becomes that after feeding those starving families, where do I get back the money from that $100 million to give back, plus the interest? Even though it's not market rate interest, there's still interest. So people aren't giving into development. So it's like, you may want to feed that starving family, but really, how is that going to develop the country? How is that going to bring more infrastructure into the country?
No, it's a good point. And there's this thing called cultural relativism. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term, but I think the documentary that you're doing is going to help provide that cultural relativism so that we can understand what's truly needed in places like Jamaica if we're going to develop those nations. So good point. Good, and you're doing some great work. And let's go on though. So how is COVID-19 affecting the work that you and others are trying to do for the grassroots development piece?
COVID-19 is really showing the importance of grassroots initiatives. Due to the lack of travel, people can't travel and go give, because there's a lot of missions trips. So you have a lot of people, I guess this is a big market right now. People will go and they'll go to countries and they'll build houses in other countries. First off, that was ruining the economy of these countries in the first place because they were taking away the jobs of the contractors that lived within these communities, and they weren't able to sit down and do their work. Now you have all these amateurs coming in and trying to build a house, which in essence is very dangerous. But because of COVID-19, there's a lack of travel. So because of that lack of travel, now communities are having to look to one another to be that helping hand. So COVID-19 has really showed how dangerous it is to depend on an outside source, to come in and help you, because now they're not coming in anymore. Now they're not flying in. It's actually showing that even though aid is very important, how are you going to develop past aid? Because now countries aren't really able to give as much aid as possible. A lot of people are losing their jobs. A lot of people aren't able to make as many of the donations that they may have wanted to make. And a big thing in Jamaica is people would mostly bring down things when they traveled to Jamaica. So they travel to Jamaica, they bring down stuff for their family and friends. Now that people aren't traveling, now the question becomes, how do we get that stuff there? What do we do?
So what is the answer there? What are your
The,
thoughts on that?
the
So
answer is
so so
simply
exports and imports, that's being impacted by this, right?
that is, well, exports and imports on a commercial level aren't. They really haven't shut that down because that's what drives an economy in Jamaica, at least. They haven't shut down
Okay.
those exports and imports on a commercial level. But the exports and the imports coming from people who just went down and traveled and would bring things are seriously affected. And a lot of people from Jamaica know, when you hear somebody that's going to Jamaica, which you heard a lot more before, you'd ask them, hey, can you bring this down? Can you bring this up? Certain
Mhm.
things like that. And basically how we work to fix that is we actually put our money into the local economy. Once you put your money into the local economy, what happens is people start buying stuff from local shops. People start perpetuating, because remember, an economy is nothing more than the movement of money within a community. What happens is, a lot of times in these third world countries, we send over so many goods from the US to these countries that we stop the movement of money within those local economies. We stop the job creation, and we create deeper and deeper dependence, and we create this vicious cycle, and nobody can figure out. But then
Mhm.
for the people who actually have to live within that economy, things get more expensive because those companies aren't selling as many. Like, let's say rice. If I own a supermarket and I have to sell rice, if my rent is the same no matter what, if my rent is $100 and I sell to 10 people, then I can sell each of them $10. That'll cover my rent. But if only 2 people are coming to buy rice and the other 8 have their rice and they aren't coming to the store anymore, then I have to make my rent from these 2 people instead of the 10 people. And that's what people don't think. So people think that, oh, it's cheaper to buy it outside of the country than buy it in here. That's because there's very little people buying it there. So they just have to mark up their prices.
Got it. So then this provides an opportunity for communities to begin to create their own commerce, if you will,
Yeah.
and not depend on you know it's actually happening here in America as well, because our
Mm-hmm.
dependence on China for imports has been exposed by COVID as well, and so we're at 69% consumerism economy. That's going to affect the balance of things. It's going to make prices go up. We're going to see inflation, so a whole host of things. I know we're not here to talk about that, but
Mm-hmm.
now we need to be thinking about in Jamaica and places like here in America, particularly in the inner cities, how do you create your own so that you're not going outside or without the things that you need? So
Yeah, no. And Kamoy's talking about Warby Parker and Tom's, and it's like, yeah, those companies are very tricky because even though their intentions may be good, number one, they're charging us double the amount for the pair of shoes or socks or whatever it is that they're donating, and it doesn't cost them double the amount to be able to give. So a lot of that money is in essence going back into the company, and that's just a very dangerous cycle because it takes away jobs, it takes away infrastructure, and it takes away building. And a lot of the things that I do now that my documentary has slowly started getting a name, there are certain family members and team members that I have put on the ground in Jamaica where I can slowly fade into the background, because as much as my family is from Jamaica, when I go down there, I'm still just an American that's going down there to give. And I try to take more of a backseat role as I have team members who grew up there, grew up in the community, and I make them take more of a front seat role when it comes to giving out packages or whatever donations that we have, because what these young kids see is, oh, I know that person. That person grew up here, and look at the good that they're doing for the community. And it may not click now, but it's something that they'll always think about in the future. And when they finally get to a place to be able to give, it'll be something that's second nature to them because they've seen it growing up.
what's the importance of economic development in all of this?
When it comes to economic development, one of the things, and you talked about it last week in your interview, talk about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Mhm.
and at the top of the pyramid is self-actualization.
Right.
And when people think about charity and they think about these things, they look at self-actualization and they forget that that's the top of the mountain. You have to climb to get there. Now, what's at the bottom of that pyramid of needs are physiological needs and safety needs. So that physiological is food, water, shelter, and those safety is safety and shelter, safe financial safety, job security, those type of things. That's where economic falls. Economic falls towards the base of the pyramid. And for us to build to self-actualization, we have to be in a state where we are economically stable, we are economically safe. Because you can't tell somebody to think about saving if the money that they make is just enough for them to eat for that day. What are they saving? I know a lot of people who have no food in the fridge when they leave to go to work, and everything that they're making outside at that moment in that time is literally for the food that they're going to eat that same night. And while they would love to save and they'd love to think about investing and how to get into the future, it's very hard for them because they don't know where their next meal is coming from. It's just something that just doesn't happen. Until we fix the bottom of that pyramid and slowly build, we can't get to self-actualization.
Thoughts on how we fix it? How do we create that economic development?
We create that economic development by investing money into our communities. And once we invest money into our communities, what happens is we slowly start having our own. We start buying our own businesses. We start having our own real estate. We start holding our own governmental officials accountable because we have the time, the know-how, and the expertise to be able to figure it out. So it's just something as simple as it starts out by giving. It starts out by giving. People slowly start to understand. Then you slowly start to unite your money. And as you unite your money, all of a sudden you're able to buy properties. You're able to kind of ease the burden of living paycheck to paycheck. Because that burden of living paycheck to paycheck kind of disconnects you from the rest of the world. If you have to work 16 hours a day, you really don't know a lot of what your government officials are doing. You really don't know a lot of what's going on within your community because you're tired when you come home. Sometimes you can barely engage enough with your family. So once we start building with one another, once we start finding ways that we can have our money work for us rather than us working for our money, then all of a sudden we start building a stronger economic presence. And when you have a stronger economic presence in any country, no matter where you are in this world, stronger economic presence means you have a larger voice. Once you have a larger voice, you can speak up for different things. And once you're able to speak up for different things, you're able to create a change in your community. Because we always talk about raising children is nature versus nurture, but it's not versus, it's nature and nurture. So as much as you want to nurture your children, if the environment they live in isn't conducive for growth, understanding, and getting to the next level, then we fall the risk of undoing everything that we nurture our children with just by not being more active in the environment that they grow up in.
Good points. You talked about combining your resources. You have any thoughts on microbanking or I'm not sure if that's a term that you're familiar with, but just wanted to know if you have any thoughts on that.
I do like Muhammad Yunus, who's the founder of Garmin Bank, which they do microloans.
Mm.
I do like the aspect of microbanking because what it does is it opens up a realm of loans that weren't available to certain people, because there are a lot of people in these countries in the poorest of countries around the world that just don't have access to credit scores. So what Garmin Bank did and what a lot of people started to develop after them is it basically, if me, you, Kamoy, and two other people, we all know each other, we would go to the bank and we would say, hey, we each want separate loans. I'll go first. They would give me the loan, and you guys getting your loans would be dependent on me paying back my loan on time. And that is something that's very amazing because it opened up banking to a realm of people that never had access to that type of banking. I think it's a very important aspect of it because you learn every day that a lot of these people who are wealthy used other people's money to get there. And sometimes we as a I don't even want to, but it's lower class, but I hate using lower class because just because we have less money doesn't mean we're lower class, but we have a different economic standing.
Mhm.
We of a lower economic standing, we get so caught up in using cash all the time that we actually limit our ability to grow because we're so afraid of using debt because we weren't properly trained on how to use debt. So I think that is very important. As long as these microfinance institutions provide education as well. You can't just, it's like just giving a high school kid a credit card. If they don't understand and they aren't taught how to properly use it, then there's a potential for it to be detrimental to their future rather than beneficial.
Yeah,
So microfinance institutions have to be paired with financial education.
got it. And is that something you would force to happen based as a contingency of getting the loan, or
Yes,
would that
that's
be?
something I would definitely,
Yeah.
even before you, it's like, hey, you say you want to get a loan, all right, the five of you go to these classes, and then once you finish these classes, we'll go over everything and we'll start working on your loan. Because sadly the governments haven't taken over, at least where I'm from, they haven't taken over the financial education of our young. And there are people who live in different worlds that financial education is something they learn from 13 and younger. They understand bills, they understand debt, they understand these different things, and they have these conversations at home. And in our communities, it has become so taboo because we're so ignorant to it. And the last thing that a parent wants to do is say they don't know. So a lot of times we just don't talk about it, and that's very detrimental. And I always like there's these two specific points that I always bring up because I'm very open about finance when I talk to acquaintances and friends and coworkers and stuff like that. And one of my coworkers told me, do you know that every 6 months you can just ask for a increase in your credit limit? Just every 6 months. If you've been paying on time, you can ask them for an increase in your credit limit, or you can ask them to lower your interest rate. And I like the credit limit one because when you ask for an increase in your credit limit, you lower your credit utilization without even paying anything off, and that increases your credit score just right there.
But the trick is not to spin it, right?
Yeah, the trick 30%. You got to keep that credit utilization under 30% unless it's
Right.
unless it's an emergency. Then you get
Right.
right back to paying it back to that 30%. But let's say
The
you
trick
are,
also is that this time of year, a lot of companies will increase your limit because they know it's the holiday season, and what do people do?
they're spending.
They spend it, right?
They're spending. There's a saying that says if you see a TV that was $500 and now $250, you didn't save $250. You spent $250.
That's correct. I cut you off. You about to make another point?
No, 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 no.
So when do you think the documentary will be done? Excuse me.
Good God, I get this question so much. One, I'm not a filmmaker, so it's funny. I started this documentary. It was just me running around with the camera and interviewing people. And as time went on, now I have three people that are part of the film crew and the edit crew. Um, I have a director of marketing, my cousin Jerry in Jamaica. He does all my marketing in Jamaica. If I'm not down there, he's out there passing out flyers, stickers. We have a banner that we go around with now. So I was really hoping that by the end of this year it would have been finished, but because of COVID, we just haven't been able to get as much filming done as we've wanted to revisit certain people, talk to them again, get more B-roll. That gets very difficult.
Mhm.
Luckily, one thing I was able to do was I was able to take two of my camera people with me to Jamaica. They had never been to Jamaica, so they were able to come down to Jamaica. We were able to shoot some footage, and we were able to I think they said we got about a terabyte of footage. So I'm definitely hoping by this time next year the film will be done. And one of my biggest distribution plans is, even no matter no matter what film festival or wherever that I get it into here, one thing I want to be able to do is I want to be able to show the film for free in Jamaica, because I don't think this film has a standing or has any purpose if I don't show it in Jamaica for free to the youth of Jamaica, because I think we're running very close to losing Jamaica, because one of the things that's happening down there is there's lots of investments going on, but it's from companies that are not Jamaican. So even though they're making these grand amount of money in these hotel industries and stuff, they're not reinvesting it into the community because it's not their community. And that's very dangerous.
Well, it's tough. All right, I'm with Mikey T, everybody. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comment section, or you can hit the question mark and put your question there as well. We've been talking about grassroots community development, and also he's writing a documentary, or I should say filming a documentary about his mother's homeland, Jamaica. So any questions, thoughts, let us know.
Yeah, and at Jamaica _story is the Instagram of the documentary. That's where you can find a lot of the content that we have up, a lot of the people we've talking to, the COVID relief that we've done, those type of things. One another funny stories, and I always tell this story because this is how I met Kamoy. I met Kamoy because I had found out from my cousin that because my mom is Jamaican, I was able to claim Jamaican citizenship through lineage, through birthright. It was a birthright of mine. And I went to the consulate in the city and I filed for my Jamaican citizenship, and I got my Jamaican passport. And there was an event about the Jamaican Stock Exchange. And I was talking to the consul general at the time and was like, yeah, I got my Jamaican citizenship. And I told her the story. And I remember Kamoy tapped me on my shoulder and she was like, you got your Jamaican passport? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, I thought I was the only person that did. And I was like, I thought I was the only person that did, because there's very few people, especially in the Jamaicans households, that aren't born there, that just want that piece of paper that said they're a Jamaican citizen, because you're able to fly into Jamaica whenever you want with a U.S. passport. You got 2 weeks and stuff like that. But I will say it's very liberating when I go down there to know that they basically can't kick me out. they can't.
And why would they?
They can't kick me out. I can get a job if I want down there without having a visa and those type of things. And it's just, I think it's very important for people to have their potential of another home if possible, if needed.
Got it. All right, Mikey. Well, listen, I really enjoyed that conversation.
Listen,
very insightful, very, very intelligent young man. I can say that because I'm old.
I feel old.
I can't wait, like Seneca said, I can't wait to see the film.
Yeah, no, I definitely can't wait to put it out there.
And I wish you nothing but the best in your future endeavors, okay? And listen, don't be a stranger. Come back on the show. We'll have you back on to talk about. I know you're flying out tomorrow morning, right?
Yes, sir.
So thank you for joining on the show. And you got his flight in the morning, and you're going to Jamaica. So I wish you nothing but the best, okay?
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I love what you're doing. I love the information and the content that you're bringing to the people. It's just amazing, and it's something I definitely look up to, as it's something that I pray to be able to do in Jamaica, because with the blessings of technology, we're able to really change the narrative and change the stories and the abilities and the opportunities for people without having to leave their home.
100%. Well said. On that note, we'll end the show. So thanks again, Mikey.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Take care. All right, everyone, that's the show. We'll see you next Wednesday. We'll have actually Devin Roy, the second, will be on the show, and we're going to be talking about economics. So see everyone then. Take care.
I have to pay attention to that one.
Take care, man.